Hey guys, you're watching. Reader Recap. Joshua Sanders, a knight, shattered the stereotype that it is unique to use a sword in order to reach the realm of a master. He is considered the strongest in the E-Grant continent, a great hero who ended the war of the Avalon Empire. A knight so courageous met his end in the most powerless manner. Joshua is told that he is a martial artist who has developed mana to the utmost limit. The absolute incompatibility of demonic energy and divine power is now clashing in his body. He'd be dead by now if he were a normal person. Joshua knows what is to come and is agitated as he states that he was never greedy for the throne. He never had the desire for it in the first place. He just wanted the whole world to know of the greatness of the spear and to escape the sorrow-filled life of a concubine's son. He wanted to help his best friend and his lord end the long-lasting civil war in the empire. He wanted to serve as the shield that defends the empire for the rest of his days. He questions his fate and the magic tower. E-Grant responds that the civil war has ended, and the emperor is now in a position where he can achieve everything he has planned without any danger. The only thing that the emperor now has to fear is Joshua. Joshua lays on the ground, helpless. The man thanks Joshua for his efforts, as if it weren't for him, they wouldn't have been here. They are sincerely grateful to Joshua, and with that, they bid him farewell. The Emperor Van Britain turns away, saying he can't bear to watch the last moments of his best friend. Joshua feels deceived. He has 5 minutes before the magic circle explosion takes place. He feels helpless and hopeless, a lousy knight betrayed by a trusted friend. Just as he is about to reach his end, he sees Lugia, the blood-red spear known as the Death Reaper of the battlefield. He takes a hold of it, and just as he does so, an explosion takes place. The distinguished individual of the country of knights, the Avalon Empire, met a vain end befitting his fame as the undefeated spear knight. Suddenly, Joshua finds himself in a stable, questioning how he ended up there. He realizes it was the place he once resided in, and that he has now returned to the past. He is glad to have received another chance to retaliate for all that had happened to him in the past. As Joshua stands up to process what is happening, he encounters 3 men, Rolls, Royd, and Gort, who he believes are the soldiers of Duke. They ask him harshly about why he hasn't been working, and as Joshua doesn't respond, they call him a mute in a degrading manner, saying he can't talk. They look for his mother, Lugia, and talk about her in a disrespectful manner, which annoys Joshua. Lucia, the Agnes family's exclusive servant, was the woman whom Duke Agnes forcefully slept with, and gave birth to his illegitimate child, Joshua. Joshua gets endlessly bullied since he is an illegitimate child of the Duke. Rolls talks disrespectfully of Lucia, and Royd asks him to keep quiet since they can get into great trouble if someone finds out. Rolls is confident that they could do anything with Joshua and his mother, since Duchess Vanessa has also said that if anything happens, she will handle it and take responsibility for it. They seem disappointed that Lucia isn't around, but they decide to bully Joshua instead. Meanwhile, Joshua manages to regain his energies and is full of wrath as they insult his mother. His training for mana is now different, as he can now reach an optimal state in a short amount of time. It doesn't use or trace the mana in the area located at the lower abdomen. Instead, it uses the scattered mana in the surrounding area as it is. His whole body is able to absorb mana. He can now utilize it in an instant. As one of the men approaches to beat Joshua, they are surprised at how Joshua faints while standing still. Joshua has his eyes closed while he tries to gain a handful of mana. He can now easily do things that took him 10 years to learn in his previous life. He musters courage and punches the man with great force, making him fall to the ground. The other 2 men are surprised with the way Joshua managed to beat the man, making him unconscious. Joshua senses a sticky and disgusting lump in his lower abdomen, which should apparently be empty. Joshua looks at the other 2 men and thinks how hard it is to fight men who have trained with long swords. He thinks that if he beats Royd, the Rolls might not come at him since he's the most cautious among them. Just as Royd approaches, Joshua slashes at him and uses his mana to throw him back to the ground, making him unconscious. Rolls is surprised at Joshua's abilities. Joshua finally speaks, warning them that if they come again and insult his mother, They will have to face the consequences. Just as Joshua's done speaking, he rolls and runs rapidly, and Joshua falls to the ground as the extreme use of mana makes him weak. The news of Joshua beating the men has reached the castle, and everyone seems to be talking about it with utmost curiosity. They are amazed at the way Joshua, who was considered mute, has finally spoken, and some even feel the news is exaggerated. They also mention how the Duke might consider changing his plans for choosing the next successor, but they are also reminded of how the young master Babel is a magician, and nobody can beat him in succession. The young master Babel has turned 14 and is now able to use mana, overshadowing the Duke, who could use mana only at the age of 16. Joshua shows up and asks the soldier to tell the Duke that he has come. Meanwhile, the Duke has called upon Rolls to inquire about what had happened earlier. Rolls shows the Duke's uniform, which is made of crumbled and distorted orc leather. The Duke can't seem to wrap his head around the fact that a 9-year-old can possess and use mana. Chiffon says it's almost impossible in the history of the continent. He believes that Rolls is just making up stories and threatens to get rid of him if he doesn't tell the truth. The Duke says it's about time he met Joshua. The Duke is informed that Joshua has arrived to meet him. While waiting to meet the Duke, Joshua catches a glimpse of a portrait of Van Britten on a wall, which agitates him as he was betrayed by Van, whom he considered his best friend in his previous life. There is a sense of anger deep within his heart. He is attacked by a young boy, and in no time the Duke and Chiffon arrive. The Duke is angry as to why they were fighting, and the young master says that they were just greeting. Joshua doesn't kneel down to greet the Duke, which annoys Chiffon. The Duke then takes Joshua's wrist to see if he has mana, and just as he does so, he feels a form of energy that he can't seem to understand. The Duke lets go of Joshua's hand and is surprised to find no signs of mana in his body. The Duke is bewildered, as any being alive innately has some magic, but Joshua has none. Chiffon tells the Duke that he already knew that Joshua had no mana and was just a mere being. The Duke thinks to himself that there is something in the mana hall that should feel sticky, but makes him feel disgusted. Chiffon says that they should not believe baseless rumors coming from the centurions about Joshua possessing mana at such a young age. The Duke orders Joshua to reside at the castle, which triggers the young master Babel, as he despises Joshua. He orders Chiffon to teach Joshua the basics of being a knight, and also to teach him the mana training methods. Chiffon says there is no point in training him since he is innately incapable of possessing mana. The Duke says that he has hope in Joshua. Joshua is ushered to his room, and Chiffon is surprised to have received no response from Joshua after being blessed with all the benefits. Joshua lays on the bed thinking of how the Duke mentioned that he has high hopes for him in the upcoming years. Joshua jumps out of his room at night to regain some strength. Just as he does so, the soldiers are suspicious that someone is hiding, but they find no one there. Joshua manages to escape. Meanwhile, Gore and Royd, the soldiers, have assaulted Joshua's mother. They are scared that if Joshua finds out, he might kill them right away. Immediately after, Joshua shows up and is full of wrath. Joshua warns them to leave, and one of the men, according to Joshua, is a knight that Duke Agnes personally appoints. The Red Knight feels a surreal and bizarre pressure around Joshua that he can't seem to resist. The Red Knight attacks the centurions, bothering Joshua's mother. The soldier begs him to spare him, but the knight doesn't let go of him. Joshua shouts from behind the knight, asking him to stop, but the knight says that the man is guilty of being disrespectful towards the lady of the Duke's family and must be punished. Joshua assumes the Red Knight is of C-class rank since he was able to subdue the centurions with only a few swings of his sword. Joshua asks the Red Knight who he serves, and the Red Knight responds by saying he serves the Duke Agnes. Joshua orders the knight to sheath his sword and let go of the man. The knight follows commands. Joshua warns him and asks him to tell the soldiers everything he saw today without leaving out any details. The Red Knight, out of curiosity, asks Joshua if he really is the Lord. Joshua is triggered and says that he is no longer a shit cleaner or mute. The knight mentions that he will soon be deciding who to serve, and for the upcoming year, he will leave his duty and serve Joshua. Joshua then meets his mother and embraces her, assuring her that he will now protect her at all costs. Joshua is glad to have received another life where he can live as the strongest spear on the continent. At the mansion, the Duke and Chiffon are engaged in a discussion. They discuss how Count Rebecca, an influential man of the empire, has visited them along with his daughter, Iselin Jin Rebecca, a genius who reached the second class at the age of 9 and was blessed with mana. He believes Rebecca has come with the intention of wooing his daughter to young Master Babel. The young Master Babel has 3 years until his coming-off ceremony, and he already has Lady Cheryl, who is the daughter of the Pontier family, which rose to dukedom with only their riches. The Duke is considering Joshua for Iselin. Chiffon is surprised as he says that Lady Iselin has received the mana blessing while Joshua has the mana curse. In the northern part of the Duke's garden, there is an old stone. Joshua is trying to get to the top and reminisces about how he used to often visit the place. He remembers how he discovered Lugia here. He deliberately bit his hand to get some blood out of it, and as the blood dripped, he put some on the ground, and a circular energy formed around him. It is a source for him to get to the temple that possesses the Lugia. As he approaches the temple, he realizes it has been ruined, and that the Lugia was once stuck here, wrapped in chains. As he touches the Lugia, he feels a force, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in an all-white place. Joshua hears a strange voice that says, "I'm not an iron rod, I'm the demon god spirit Lugia." Joshua is confused and asks if the Lugia he spent his previous life with was the demon god spirit, which has also changed shape. "We have no time," says the iron rod. Joshua is told that as time passes, the 2 energies within his body will eat away at his life. In order to settle the 2 energies, he requires stage 4 of the magic spear arts. On the Igrant continent, swords are the greatest weapon for the knight, and spears are thought of as flimsy weapons. In his previous life, his magic spear arts were at stage 4. At 5th rank, he became the strongest knight in the empire. The iron rod assures him that he is with him and will help him. He takes the Lugia, does certain stunts with it, and says that as long as he is near the Lugia, he can use a certain amount of mana. He believes he will be able to easily defeat Van Britten with the amount of strength he will eventually unleash. Duke Agnes has arrived at the reception and encounters Cheryl and her father, a distinguished figure among the Ponty family's retainers. Cheryl seems to have a connection with the Duke, as she talks in a rather carefree manner. Meanwhile, the Count, Jean Rebecca, has also arrived alone with his daughter, waiting to meet the Duke. Iselin meets the Duke, and Cheryl is annoyed after finding out that Iselin is also present. She asks if Joshua had actually beat up the 3 centurions, and the knight's answer is that it was all just a rumor, and that Joshua had a mana curse. Meanwhile, the Duke talks to Rebecca about Joshua, and asks him to look after Joshua since Rebecca is more sensitive to mana than the Duke himself. Chiffon asks the Duke if they can first confirm if Joshua was really born with a mana defect. The Duke is somewhat annoyed, as he says that they can't use a Crimson Knight on a 9-year-old boy. Chiffon convinces the Duke that he has someone under command who is perfect for this task. Cain, the knight who protected Joshua's mother, reported earlier to Chiffon that the centurions were attacking the Duke's wife. Chiffon is surprised and asks if Duchess Vanessa is all right, and Cain responds that it's Lucia Nim and not Vanessa Nim. Chiffon doesn't consider Lucia to be of any importance. Chiffon tells Cain that he'll spar with Joshua today to check if the young Joshua master really has the mana curse. Chiffon is worried about the fact that Joshua might take over Babel's place, which is why he manages to convince the Duke that Joshua is a mere young boy with no mana. Chiffon asks Cain to inject mana into Joshua's body to see if his body rejects or accepts it. If he opposes the man in his body, he won't be able to survive more than 10 days. Cain is surprised at how openly Chiffon supports Babel and is against Joshua. Cain meets Joshua and tells him that he has been ordered by the Duke to spar with him. Joshua is excited, but Cain says that he won't do it for real since he can't fight his own master. Joshua is offended and says that he shouldn't be taken lightly and that Cain should give it his best since his sword exists for that purpose. The Duke and others arrive. Chiffon tells Joshua that it's not a test, but a concern from the Duke to confirm if he has any disabilities. The Duke's order tells Cain that it's not him that Joshua is going to fight with, but the young master called Babel. The Duke orders them to spar only with a wooden sword and not a real one, since it's just training they are doing. Joshua is all set to show them his true strength and capability. He tells the Duke that he will only be using a stick, which surprises everyone. As the fight begins, Joshua strikes with his rod, and Babel is strangely confused. He goes on to fight with utmost strength, and Babel begins to cuss at him. Babel considered him weak and someone with no mana, but Joshua had shown his real strength and also used mana, which Rebecca believes is a high level of mana and cannot be compared to that of Babel's. As the fight gets intense, the Duke stops them and is surprised at Joshua's level of mana as well as his strength to have fought Babel with a mere stick. Everyone is shocked and confused, questioning how a concubine's son could have fought the young master Babel. The Duke orders Joshua to meet him personally, which agitates Chiffon and Babel since the Duke never really calls anyone to his room. Meanwhile, Princess Cheryl is amazed at the skills of Joshua and says, "I will make him mine," portraying how things may start to get worse. The wife of Duke Agnes Venus Pon asks Chiffon about the matters that occurred earlier. Chiffon tells her everything he sees. He also tells her how Babel lost to Joshua, which angers her so much that she smacks Chiffon. She can't seem to accept the fact that Joshua is a mana user. Chiffon says that the Duke might take him to the capital, where he'll keep an eye on him. Chiffon believes that the Duke will announce to the people that Joshua uses rank C magic, and he might as well make him duel against the members of the Royal Knights. This makes Vanessa happy, as she will now use her conspiracies to make sure Joshua doesn't win. Meanwhile, Joshua comes to meet the Duke and questions him about who he really is, to which Joshua responds that he's the same young man he's always known. The Duke asks him if he's ever held grudges against him for overlooking him all these years, and Joshua says there's nothing like that. Joshua says he's very confident that the Duke will take him to the capital, mainly because he now considers Joshua the next successor, and also to prevent any family brawls. Joshua tells the Duke that he will only be using a spear for all the training, which surprises the Duke. Joshua is confident that he will even be able to fight the 9 sages with the spear he possesses. Duke Agnes is one of the 9 stars and says he himself will be testing Joshua out. If he wins, his request to use the spear will be accepted, and if not, he will have to go to the academy for training. Vanessa has gone to meet her uncle, whom she believes would be of help in defeating Joshua and getting rid of him. She is all set to remove Joshua from her son's path. Joshua is at the castle and encounters Babel, who offers to fight him once again. Joshua asks if he's confident enough, and Babel, with his passion and desire to defeat Joshua, says he's all set to fight him. At the Great Imperial Palace, Marcus Van Britten had been informed of all the recent details regarding Joshua. Britten is unaware of the fact that Joshua is the Duke's illegitimate child, and once told, he admits he's envious. The man also updates him on the rumors spreading about Joshua defeating Babel, and upon hearing that Britten is shocked as a 9-year-old made the greatest talent of the Empire fall to his knees. Britten says that it's a blessing for the Empire to possess a child so strong and courageous. Britten says he can't go because of the wild dogs, with their eyes wide open waiting for some sort of opportunity. He orders an imperial prince to be sent to the mansion to confirm Joshua's skills. Meanwhile, Joshua and Babel are caught in a fight again, as Babel can't seem to accept defeat. Babel realizes Joshua has way too much power and strength and will be very hard to defeat. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you and see you on the next one.